Hello, everyone. This is Jeremy Dennis, lead artist of Moz House. Thanks for tuning in. Today we have Cecilia Lim and Juan Giraldo as today's podcast guests and resident artist. Cecilia is a community-engaged artist based in Queens, New York, whose work in dialogue, short documentary film, and printmaking explores themes of connection, environment, and collective well-being. A first-generation U.S.-born Tagalog Toysan woman, Cecilia leads Remember Your Connection, a project aimed at inspiring people to reconnect with themselves and the world around them. In 2024, she served as visiting artist faculty at the Philippine Women's University and was a social justice film fellow with Third World Newsreel. Her work has received support from the New York Foundation of the Arts, Flushing Town Hall, the Puffin Foundation, and Queens Council for the Arts. Her films have screened internationally, including at Fringe of Color in Edinburgh, and she is currently showing Louder Than Words, a hybrid film on medicine, gender care, Jewish identity, and liberation. Juan Giraldo is a Brooklyn-based photographer whose work explores the personal and domestic spaces of working-class life, particularly focusing on his family in Paterson, New Jersey, and the employees of Great Lakes Reload. Born in Manizales, Colombia, and raised in New Jersey, he holds an MFA from Columbia College, Chicago, and a BFA from William Paterson University. His photography captures the texture of labor, home, and immigrant experience, reflecting on his own background as a first-generation immigrant and labor. Giraldo has exhibited widely across the U.S. and internationally, with shows including Photoville, Brooklyn, Photo Lucida Critical Mass Top 50, and the Universal Filter Photo in Chicago. He is a recipient of awards and fellowships such as the Hopper Prize, the Center for Photography at Woodstock Artist in Residence Program, and Columbia's Dwight D. Bullitt Fellowship. So Cecilia and Juan, thanks so much for joining the podcast.
Glad to be here.
Thank you for having us.
You've both been residents here at Moz House on the Shinnecock Nation territory for a little bit over 1 week, and you have about 3 to 4 days remaining. I'm wondering if we could start by, for our listeners, talking about each of the projects that you've been working on since you've been here.
Thank you, Jeremy. It's been so wonderful to be here. And the project that I came to work on is called Mending and Repair Circles. It is the fourth part of my Remember Your Connection project. I've been circling up with other conflict practitioners, and the piece that I have been working on here is interviewing tribal members of Shinnecock Nation to learn about the conflict practices that they have, being people who have, it's been a real gift to get to be here and be building what I hope to be a long-term relationship with tribal members and with Moz House.
It's been a joy and a pleasure to be here at Moz House and getting to know some of the members and some of the founding members of Moz House. I'm very indebted to Jeremy's grandma for this space. I just wanted to add that when I read the About mission for Moz House a couple of times over, and this time around when I was filling out the application, it really stuck with me and what this space meant to Jeremy's grandma. And I got teary-eyed after, when reading that. And that leads me to the work that I've been making here, which is about my grandfather. So in my time here, I made 4 28 by 28 collages with copies of photos that were ruined in a flood in 2021 and building a non-linear narrative with these collages of my grandfather's history, and I guess my grandparents as well, but he looms larger and more as a central figure in all 4 panels, and it's been very inspiring to be able to accomplish that work here.
That's wonderful. Thank you both so much. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about coming from Queens and Brooklyn here to Shinnecock. How has your work either responded to the place, being in the Hamptons, or being here at Shinnecock and at Moz House? How has your projects either developed or responded, or Have you checked out our library or anything like that?
Yes, I have checked out the library and I have been reading books about Shinnecock history, and I also intentionally applied to come here with the goal and the hope that I would be able to deepen my connection with this place, not just the land, but also the people here and the non-human beings that also live and thrive here. It's been kind of totally incredible to be able to spend time on the Shinnecock territory and get to connect with Jeremy and members of your immediate family, as well as other people from the nation, and do things like sing karaoke and go to Algonquin language class and experience a little bit of what Ma's House has brought to this community, and the way that Ma's House has been a space for tribal members to come together and create with one another and reclaim culture. It's just been so grounding and a real privilege, and very different from earlier experiences that I've had coming to this part of the world, which is really odd and very much in contrast to the connection that's here. Yeah, I'll leave it at that for now.
For me, I've done a couple of residencies over the years, and I would say that in contrast with the one I did a few years back, and where I felt it was a very welcoming space, but I wasn't relaxed. I think stepping into Ma's House has been very calming and very proactive for the work I've been making here. It's had a profound change in a very short amount of time for me, in terms of both being able to produce the work but not be encumbered by being in my head about the work, and just feeling very free and liberated to place things down onto, I guess for lack of better words, like canvas, and not think about the art world and really produce the work that I came here to do, which, I didn't know how it would turn out. And I'm very happy and grateful for being able to produce that here. So it's had a very, this land, the Shinnecock people, your family, and extended family members it's been wonderful to get to know them. And yeah, I've never done karaoke, and I'm a very shy person and very reserved, but
you lost your karaoke virginity here.
Yeah, I did. And it was wonderful. I mean, it's, like no reservation, when it came to doing that. Like once, I lost my virginity karaoke wise, I felt like that sort of just like opened things up, and like making the work here was great.
That's awesome. So we're basically making history here at Ma's House, changing the world.
That's right.
But in addition to the karaoke and those public engagements, you also mentioned the language class. Each of you also led your own activities. So Cecilia, you led an activity at the Bridgehampton Museum. It was in relation to your conflict resolution and story circles. And that was part of the Upon This Ground series, our partnership with Bridgehampton Museum. And Juan, you led a collage activity as part of your ongoing teaching and academic background. I'm wondering if each of you had any takeaways. I think since social engagement is such a big part of staying at Ma's House and connecting with individuals, were there any surprises or things you would take from this experience here and bring to your future public engagements?
Yeah, I'm a photographer and artist, but collage has never really figured into my work. And so, but I teach, and part of teaching is sharing the knowledge that you have and not just doing like the rote work. The way I approached the workshop was thinking like a little kid, almost like learning their shapes and things like that, and thinking about Sesame Street and the way I learned English and what makes sense, what doesn't make sense, and just translating that into a visual form with bits and pieces of other people's work. It was very happy and proud of the work that the participants of the workshop made. And there are a couple of things from this workshop that I think going back into the classroom in the fall, I'd like to implement, whether it's photo or like 2D design. Curious to take the last exercise we did where everybody cut up a few images out of magazines or art books, and we took a piece of paper and the participants glued down one or all of their artworks onto the substrate, and then they passed it around, and then it was a collaborative piece. And I thought that was so much fun just to see what people's decision-making skills around that and how they, inherently, we're looking at color, shape, light in all these things and how they came together. I was, ecstatic, beyond happy with everyone's results on Sunday night, on Mother's Day. So thank you to all who came on Mother's Day night.
Yeah, I had a great time at your workshop.
Thank you.
I love the way you facilitated it. I loved how you were able to engage us in more story sharing as we were doing the collages, and just gave a lot of room for us to be expressive. And the first couple of collages, there wasn't much of a direction in terms of content. It was just, okay, you really encouraged us to go with our instinct in a way and work outside of any constraint that maybe we might tend to put on ourselves or feel like we needed to do. I loved the kind of story share that you led us in, talking about our connection to art. And it was interesting to see how a few people, even though they had been trained as artists, like they had gone to school, they still hesitated greatly calling themselves artists. And it was really lovely to see how encouraging you were of them.
Oh, thank you. And what I loved about your workshop was just how everyone opened up and how vulnerable people became in front of, everyone's a stranger, with the exception of the two people that I knew going into this. And it was cathartic for me, for sure.
It was kind of wild that I didn't know what to expect. And me too. I was like, I didn't know what to expect either. At first I thought it was going to be very homogenous, the folks who came, because it was not here at Ma's house and it was at a museum and it was a weeknight. I was really pleasantly surprised at how representative it was. We had like half of us, maybe even more than half of us, were BIPOC folks, and there are a good number of, people of different sexual orientation. And I think age-wise, we had definitely more adults and elders. And there were definitely, I think, people of some different class backgrounds there. Mm. And I was surprised at how open people were about sharing their experiences, and how one of the things that came out was that everybody shared some way they felt like they didn't belong here, in ways that they had felt or continue to feel like they don't have a place, or that they are odd in some way. And yeah, I think I was very pleased to hear about people feeling like they could take up the space and be that vulnerable with people that they didn't know and that they were meeting for the first time.
And Cecilia, you said that this is a practice, I think you said for 14 years you've been facilitating these story circles. So I wonder if you could describe for our listeners, like, what does this entail? Like, if you came back to Shinnecock in the future, what would they sit down and do?
That's a great question. Yeah, I've been holding spaces like the one I held at the Bridgehampton Museum for a while now. Open up with talking a little bit about setting up the space and having some agreements. Also seeing if other people have agreements that they want the group to consider. And once we have that down, usually the agreements will include agreeing to having the stories stay, but the lessons leave. We did timed turns to try to have some equitable space for everybody. And I can't actually remember the last agreement, but whatever it was, it was important, but I can't remember it right now. And then I usually say a few things for folks to consider. So because we were talking about relationships and conflict, I said a little bit about that. And then everyone had a chance to share before anyone shared twice. And you had up to 2 minutes to share whatever was on your mind. I think it was really effective. It's been really effective to do that very simple format.
I wanted to get back to just the residency side of things and just the idea of how you both have been structuring your time. So day by day, like you're removed from your daily lives, sometimes stresses, your work schedule. You both have been waking up very early, starting your day with usually a beach walk. How is your scheduling in terms of creativity been different from your day-to-day back home?
I normally get up at 5 in the morning to go to work or the gym, and it's been nice to sleep in till at least 6. I've been fortunate enough to go on 2 beach walks with Cecilia, and that was like really great. I wouldn't call it swimming, but definitely getting in the water, and then coming back home and doing my normal morning routine, which is like to have breakfast and do a crossword puzzle and then get to work. And then I would work till lunchtime, take a break, eat, and get back to work until it's time to eat again. Maybe fit in an hour or so after that to continue to work. I'll say that I finished the collage work ahead of schedule. The last couple of days has been really nice to just reflect on the physical work that I made here. I feel like I'm in bonus time now, and so I've loosely started making a book in InDesign with images my grandfather made in Arlington Cemetery and in Washington, D.C., and some of the photo work I made down in the same areas as he did, where I feel like he got to this country and went to D.C. very quickly, and it took me many years to go down to this nation's capital.
It's been a total joy to have cleared my schedule so that here I am just working on this project and not interrupting my day with calls and Zooms and other work. It's been so wonderful to wake up early, and I've been going to the beach every morning and walking, and also just giving myself that time to daydream about other things. And sometimes I have taken some time on those walks to think about the project, especially if I'm interviewing somebody that day, then I'll be thinking about that. But basically come back, wake up at 5, head to the beach, probably be there from like 7 to 9, and then come back and by 10 be working on the project. And if I'm not interviewing someone, then I'm probably trying to set up interviews, or I'm transcribing and timestamp notation for other interviews that I've done, preparing for the Bridgehampton workshop, which I was so glad to get to do that, and actually wanted to do another one here at Ma's house, but next time. Because community engagement is so much, it's just everything that my work is. I relish every chance to interact with community and engage community with the ideas and offerings that I have. So it's been really good, really fun also to have these other cultural happenings, like be able to see the show at the church that you curated, Jeremy, and really get to go and be part of the tour that you co-led. And there's been like several art openings, and you were so generous, like extending the invite to this open call for a group show in Greenport. It's great to have that experience. So it's been very, very rich. And actually, I feel like it's like 5 months of socializing crammed into 2 weeks, which is unusual. But sleep well every night because it's been so busy.
Yeah, sleep has been great. Not having to deal with noise and having to go to work. It's been fantastic.
That's great. I do want to shout out Kara Hoplin and Jeff Lee about the Northwark Art Collective. We had that great inclusion of some work, met a lot of great people.
Yeah, they're wonderful.
I do want to ask, a big part of the Moss House residency and like the community part is the benefit of the cross-cultural collaboration. So just the benefit of bringing you all in, learning about your work, maybe doing like intro to your medium or just experiencing what you do. And then for you all, hopefully it's just like an inspiring time to be here, meet new people, so much reciprocity all around. But one thing that I see in both of your work is how you have to balance the personal storytelling and creativity with sometimes, whether one, it's like photographing someone in a new community, or Cecilia, you're recording stories from a community that you're visiting. I'm wondering how you balance your personal vision of how that story has to be told versus what the community gives you.
In my photo practice, I always think about empathy. I think in order to make a good portrait or a good picture, empathy is like the forefront of what I do. Without it, I think the work is flat, in my opinion. And I'm only speaking for myself, but I think that's the most important thing for me. Being here and being welcomed by strangers who don't know me, being open to being photographed and getting to know you more has been really wonderful. I think that's the way that I balance the personal in my work, having a connection to the people that I photograph. It's built up over some time, and sometimes it's done over the course of a few minutes in like brief conversations. Linda, who I met at the Bridgehampton Art Center Museum, we connected and I asked her if I could photograph her because I was so compelled by what she shared in Cecilia's workshop that it's like, I need to photograph this person. And getting to know you as well, being able to photograph Cecilia after becoming fast friends, I think has been very rewarding. And to answer, how do I balance out the personal? I don't know. I think the way I do that is I just want to make a really good image that's as good as any image that's come before. It's going to come after what I do, right? It's like light graces everybody equally.
Yes, I think you want to make a good image, but also having gotten to know you over the last week and a half, you also are always thinking about the light and the portrait and the person. And I think you're also thinking about capturing some essence of their spirit in your work. And that is very, very powerful and is more than just a good image, right?
Yeah, and thank you for that. I think sometimes I sell myself short, and my partner would probably say the same thing too. But no, that's spot on. You know, I think every person, every individual I've ever photographed is important to me. For them opening themselves up to my practice and what I feel for their lives and their personal histories and their families' histories. That's why I feel like a good image is, like, everyone is worthy of a good image. I'm not the first person to make a portrait, nor the last, but my stories and their stories are just as important and as compelling as the work that's inspired me and set me down this path.
I love this question. I think when I come in and I have an idea, that's very personal to me. And so I'm already coming in with my story. My idea for the project is the story. And when I interview folks, I have a set of questions already. I try to think about that person and I tailor the questions to that person. And then while I'm interviewing the person, I'm thinking about what they're saying and I will adjust my questions based on that. So it's a very collaborative experience. And I think part of what is key to the way I work is maintaining a sense of curiosity about what will happen, because I don't actually know how people are going to respond. And with that workshop at the Bridgehampton Museum, I had an idea about what people might share story about, and it is not what anybody shared story about. People went deeper, talked about race and class in this way that I had not anticipated they would. And that to me is where the beauty and the revelation comes in. And I think I bring personally the ability to make and hold a space, but it's really everybody together in that moment making what is happening happen. So even if it's just me and one other person that I'm interviewing, that's a moment that we're co-creating together.
And I think you as a facilitator are so welcoming and engaging. And I can only speak for myself, but you make it very easy to open up to you. You know, there's this light and aura about you, and the tact for the work that you do, I think, is handled with such grace.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you both for those answers. Shifting to the idea of archive, and you're both documentarian artists and creatives, and you've both accomplished so much in a little bit over a week that you've been here at Ma's house, whether it's filmmaking or the collage and doing your InDesign work, Juan. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about just like the impossible task of archiving any story or any history, just because it's like with Juan, your work is about the flood damaged images and the urgency to save or maybe create something with that. And then Cecilia, yours is both about documenting memories, so that's something that is sometimes fleeting, but also relationships and wanting to resolve and have like better relationships before. I think some people also talked about it at Bridgehampton, like before our time's up or before it's too late type of thing. So both very difficult things to overcome.
Yeah, I mean, I try not to succumb to feeling the pressure of the moment, but of course I'm driven by it. And I like how you talked about memory, because I don't often, or I haven't started to refer to myself as a memory worker, but that's new. That's newer language, and I've heard people describe me as a memory worker. And I do think that there is so much value in having knowledge that is accessible to so many people. So, you know, the two major kind of concrete outcomes that will come out of this project are the short documentary film and then this printed zine. But these experiences of coming together and having these story circles or these one-on-one engagements, that's also something that is happening and is an output. And I personally can remember different conversations that have left a big impression on me. So that's going to shape the way that I move going forward and do other work going forward. Yeah, I think if we get ahead of ourselves, it can be a little bit tricky for the work. But if we just think about the work at hand and being in the moment, that to me is really wonderful. And I think a lot of times, like I remember in your collage workshop, Juan, that people were appreciating the chance to just be in that place making this work and not thinking about anything else but just, you know, what you had in front of you. And I think given where we're at in the world and with so many things going on and so much information accessible to us so easily, to be able to actually be present in one place with your body and mind and hands and attention in one place, it's such a gift.
Yeah. The one thing that comes to mind about being here, before I get to my work and the way I work, I'm very much a person that's always, I wouldn't say high strung, but I'm a very anxious person. I just hide it well. And being here has been like the first time in a very long time where I just feel very just present and in the moment, not worrying too much, or if at all, about tomorrow at all. And so when it comes to the work that I've made here and the work I've made elsewhere, I use the word documentarian very loosely. I think to me, it's just art. I just happen to photograph things that are near and dear to me that historically have been covered fairly well, and at a lot of times not well, because it was always a very focused on white working class folk. And my grandfather's story is not singular, but it's unique to me. I think it's also universal to people like him, people like me who came to this country at various times over the course of this country's history. And speaking of memory, you know, looking at all these images that were ruined and being able to salvage them and preserve them and then take them and remix them into something else, you know, being a collage. As I was making these things, I just sort of relied on knowing that I didn't make these pictures and trying to figure out how to work with a canvas that's already been worked on and how to make something that is compelling, and also had to fight the instinct to make it be chronological, right? And have it be a loose narrative and not be here's point A, here's point B, and here's all the steps in the middle. And so that was very important to me as I was putting this multi-panel collage together, because the idea, I mean, I'm a lot older now than my grandfather was when he got to this country. And so understanding what it was like for him to come here and then be able to take that source material and make something new with that, and finding his Colombian passport and other documents that have his handwriting on it and pictures of my grandmother in there too have been very important to that narrative.
Thank you both again for those answers. And I wanted to also respond with a question, because you mentioned within the work that you're doing, anxiety sometimes comes up. And then Cecilia, you're an ear to sometimes traumatic stories or conflict. So I think one of the wonderful things that we're trying to do here at Ma's House is be a POC organization that has a lot of access to nature. I always think back to Bell Hooks and how she talks about how individuals of color have to go back to nature for healing. So I'm wondering if you could both talk about your time here in nature, your time here at the beach and in the woods, and if you could just share a little bit about your philosophies of self-care when it comes to dealing with your work, and maybe something beyond like getting ice cream. Like, what do you believe in that helps you process your work and not give up? Or
Therapy is great. But, besides those interventions, it's interesting because until you brought up that Bell Hooks quote, I've never really thought about it. That because I grew up in a small city, then I moved to a larger city, and then moved back to an even larger city. And I've never really, I love nature. I don't like bugs that stink. But when I think about the calming presence this space has had for me, it's been remarkable, right? And I used to rock climb and hike and do all those things, and I forget, when I'm in those spaces, when I have the opportunity to connect back to those spaces, it's some of the calmest I've ever been. Even when I'm doing something strenuous or getting beat up by the ocean, how calming and how centering that really is. I mean, to the point where I was like, I've slept fairly well, like, since I've been here. And outside of having coffee late at night one night and keeping me up, that was like the only time where I was like, man, that was a mistake. But it's a different quiet in that, this land is special, and it holds a history of your family, your people. I was very conscious of that walking into this house, driving through the gate when I first got here, and giving your ancestors in this land the gratitude for welcoming me into this space and having me in this space.
Yeah, one of the things I noticed when I drove in was the practice of greeting everybody who was passing by you in a car or while you were driving by, and I loved that and felt immediately connected in a different way to this place and to the people here. And there's this wisteria vine, I don't know how old this wisteria vine is, but decades old. And to watch the vine bloom, it's now in full bloom, over the past week and a half has been a gift to notice that. And there was an eastern box turtle that I saw a couple days that lives maybe close by to here, and so many different types of birds, definitely having such easy access to the ocean. I will also say that I have been doing a peer counseling practice for the last 20 years that has an anti-oppression framework and an active and engaged listening practice. And I haven't been practicing while I've been here, but what I have done is allowed myself to be really affected by what's being shared with me in the interviews. Not so much during the interviews maybe, but when I'm listening to them and doing the timestamp notation. Like I just listened to your mom's, Denise. I interviewed her the other day, and there was a part where she's talking about teaching these two young boys about how the drum is a heartbeat. And I am tearing up right now thinking about it. So I think also just being able to connect and allow myself to connect with people's stories. I feel like when I listen to your interview again, Jeremy, I'm probably going to end up crying a bunch, because I remember there were so many moments where you were sharing something really powerful and that really resonated for me. I'm remembering like another part with Denise where she is talking about the different conflicts around land, and I can't remember exactly what, but I remember making a note that like it was very strong. And yeah, I think, you know, when you're a filmmaker and you're doing interviews, you're hoping people will speak to the things in a way that make it a little bit easier for you to edit the story together that you want to tell. And you know, I'm just a very serious person, and I really want to use my work to affect change in the world and, you know, see justice realized and see it through my work. And when that happens, it's just very powerful. So yeah, just letting myself be affected by that for me is a way of healing too, is like listening to other people's stories and allowing yourself to be affected. And so you're not just a conduit, but you're part of the change that you're trying to affect.
All right, thank you both again. Maybe branching from that, well, you both, I think it's kind of ironic that you're both like documentary creatives or artists, like maybe photojournalistic and video, just trying to document stories. But when you think of journalists, you think of them as being as objective as possible, removing themselves and just getting the facts and presenting it. But you're both so emotionally deep in the way that you think and engage with people. I wonder if you could share, like, where did you learn that from? Was it a family member, or is it how you approach everything in life?
We're both not sure how to answer this question.
Or are you denying that this is true?
I'm not a photojournalist at all. I mean, I don't get hired to do that type of work. I think I had good mentors, especially because I didn't come to art and photography in a traditional manner, like graduate high school, go to college. I worked for a long time before, and I was still in community college, but I didn't decide to do this until I was in my close to mid-20s. I had mentors that pointed me in terms of art that they thought I would like and that I would gravitate to, and I naturally did gravitate to that too. But I think I always come back to the way I was raised and the love and care they showed for us as kids, and thinking about the way people like my family and coworkers and the people that I photograph now, how they would traditionally be covered in the media or in the news, in movies, even in books sometimes, and thinking we're not like one-dimensional characters. We have feelings too. And I think something that really pushed me in the right direction were the 2008 financial crisis and always seeing all this coverage of people losing their homes. Like, but what about the folks that I know, the black and brown folks that I know that are also going through this? And I mean, in that time I lost my job as well because, you know, it just happened. And then being reminded when I went back to school to pursue my grad degree that just because I'm a photographer doesn't mean that I stop being a visual artist. Then I couple that with my personal feelings and my personal history. It's like all those things coming together. I wouldn't say make what I do easy, but it definitely helps in what I do as a photographer and image maker.
Juan and I were just talking about this as we were getting ready to have dinner, and I was sharing about how I grew up and I felt very disconnected. I felt very disconnected where I grew up. I felt disconnected from who I was. And I think that it's been a long process. I'm in my late 40s now. I think this project that I'm doing of Remember Your and Our Connection is a project that I'm doing, realizing right now, like for myself as well. And I think having me be part of it.
Well, I think it's so important asking you two specifically because maybe it's unparalleled, but how did you learn the way that you care for others or have such an emotional depth when you engage with people?
Right. So I think the process and where I'm at today is figuring out how not to be apart from the work that I do. And what that requires is for me to be emotionally invested in whatever happens, both the process and the outcome. And yeah, I think that's the short answer.
Oh, thank you. I do want to, if you two don't want to ask each other a question.
I mean, this has been a good conversation. At the moment, I can't think of anything except for like probably when the mics come off, I'm like, oh, I have a question now. When they're, people of color or first gen, because like art is not things that normally working class people just like, I'm going to go be an artist, right? It's like, when you look at it historic or through the lens of art history, at the first, like making art was just like an artisanal thing. It was like a craftsperson type of thing. And then you come upon like the dark, you go through the Dark Ages, and then you come again into the Renaissance. And that's when like people are quote unquote like become artists and like go beyond the artisan thing. So my question to both of you, I guess, is what's it like being artists? How did you guys all come to art? Because for me, it wasn't like an easy thing, right? It was, you go to school and you pick a safe career, and art is not a safe career, but it's been rewarding because I get to be in spaces like this and get to know people like Jeremy and Cecilia in space like Mouse House. So how did you come to art?
This is bringing me back to what I shared in your collage workshop. And I do remember being in the basement of my familial home and finger painting. And then in my mind, that's where I was like, oh, this is what I want to do with my life. I don't think it was something I allowed myself to make center until maybe the last 10 years. And I think I was always trying to figure out whether I could give myself permission to do that. And it took that long in my life to do that.
Like Ivan, I always had different mentors, too many to name, but I actually went to college for computer science, and then when that didn't work out for whatever reason, I switched to studio art. So I've always been like an artist apologetically, and I think that's true for every artist in a way. But I think it's just like we're always trying to get approval, trying to find the value for everyone in it. It's just trying to justify it, just because when you look at the world and what we need, it does seem like art is a luxury sometimes, but also it's why we live and what makes us different. So it brings people together, would meet people you never would meet. So I guess it's true for all of us. I think maybe from that, I was going to also ask, maybe as the final question, I have so much more I want to ask of y'all, and hopefully people can reach out, but I wonder what's coming up and maybe what else might bring you to the East End or to Shinnecock. And so maybe Cecilia, I'll start with you, since you might bring your film back and present it here at Moss House.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm hoping actually to make it back for the fundraiser. I don't know how to operate in any other way other than to make real deep connection with people in place. So yeah, I want to keep supporting Moss House, and also maybe there's a project down the line we could collaborate on together. But yeah, definitely with Mending and Repair Circles, I'd like to come back and have a screening and zine release event and be able to share both with the community, as well as maybe there'll be some story circle opportunities with tribal members and also members of the general community beyond the territory.
For me, coming up, go back to work. Lame, but I need to make a living. Continue to incorporate collage into my work. Not so much through the photographs that I've made, but through this rich source material that, although was damaged by this flood, I think it's like something else, and it's become something beautiful. And I think it helps, not hinders, this personal narrative that I've been trying to create over the last 15 years. And so part of the panels that I created here on the backside when I get back to Brooklyn is to adhere these series of images I made of my grandfather's tools. One side of the panel is all these photos mounted onto silk textile that the mill he worked at produced. And then on the backside, these cold, sterile photographs of his tools that are, or the way that I envision all of this working together is creating a mobile, like the type of mobile our parents hung in our cribs to look at. And so that's some of the things that I'm working on right now after this. I'd love to be able to come back to Shinnecock land and give back in whatever way possible, whether it's financial or through time, as time can permit, because I'm getting married, so that's another big thing. But I will say that I am forever grateful to everything that's transpired in the short amount of time here.
Well, grateful for you both as well. You brought so much already, and just within a week's time. So hopefully you both will be back for the fundraiser. That's going to be July 9th this year. A little benefit for Ma's House. But I think besides that, I want to thank you both, Cecilia and Juan, for being here in the residence, being part of the podcast, and hopefully you'll connect with more Shinnecock people in the future.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you so much.
So major.